on the clinical abstracts. My name is Nathan Peck, CEO of Cure VCP Disease, also a patient with the VCP mutation. And our presenters for this session are Natalie, is it Reash?
Reash. Yep.
Reash. All right, she's a young investigator at Nationwide Children's Hospital. Looking forward to seeing this. We have Megan Iammarino, right?
Yep.
I don't even want to tell you how I remember that name. And then we have Eiman Abdoalsadig from UCI. So Megan and Natalie are both from Nationwide. And Natalie, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Nathan. And thanks for inviting me to talk. Like you said, my name is Natalie Reash. I'm a research physical therapist at Nationwide Children's in Columbus, Ohio. And so today I'm presenting baseline demographics from a 1-year prospective natural history study in patients with VCP disease, led by Principal Investigator Lindsay Alfano and in collaboration with Cure VCP. So this natural history study is a single-site prospective study of the disease, evaluating patients with genetically confirmed VCP disease over 1 year. And so I have a little picture of the study design. So at baseline, we had patients do day 1 and day 2 remote visits, and then day 1 and day 2 on-site visits, and they were randomized of which one they did first, either remote or on-site. And so then at the 6-month time point, they will do just a 1-day remote visit. And then at the 12-month time point, they'll do a 1-day remote visit and a 1-day on-site visit at Nationwide. And again, the order of remote and on-site will be randomized. So this study is ongoing. And so today I'm just going to present cross-sectional analysis of the baseline visits. And so at the baseline visits, a complete medical and family history, physical exam, and functional testing were completed. So to date, 24 patients completed baseline assessments. The cohort had a mean age of 51.2 years with a range of 28 to 66 years. 58% of the cohort was female, 100% was Caucasian, 21% Hispanic, and 96% of the patients reported myopathy type weakness with an average onset at 42.5 years of age. And the amount of time since symptom onset was an average of 8.8 years. Looking at the cohort's baseline motor function, a majority of the cohort, 88%, were considered ambulatory. And so we defined ambulatory as able to complete the 10-meter walk-run test in less than 30 seconds without an assistive device. When we look at just a gross picture of their upper extremity function, let's see, 33% could bring their arms overhead without compensation. 25% could bring their arms overhead but needed some compensatory motions to do so. And 42% couldn't quite get their arms over their head but could bring their hands to mouth level. And so, let's see, get my slides to work again. There we go. Age did not significantly correlate with the POL, which is a measure of upper extremity function. The NSAD, which measures gross motor skills in both ambulatory and non-ambulatory patients, or the 100-meter time test, which measures maximal ambulatory ability. But when we divided the cohort into mutation groups, as seen here, those in the C.476G to A and C.475C to T group were significantly milder than the other 2 cohorts in all 3 POL, NSAD, and 100-meter test scores. So then we also looked at other system involvement. Patients reported having been diagnosed with other system involvement in addition to the myopathy type weakness in a subset of the cohort. So 21% of the patients we saw had been diagnosed with respiratory involvement that required BiPAP or CPAP use. 21% reported being diagnosed with Paget's disease of the bone. And what's the percentage? 17% had cataracts. 13% had cardiomyopathy, 13% had peripheral neuropathy, and 4% had frontotemporal dementia. But upon physical exam at Nationwide, peripheral neuropathy was present in the lower extremity in 63% of the cohort, and 21% had both upper extremity and lower extremity involvement, which was defined as reduced pinprick or vibration. But only 13% had comorbidities likely to contribute, such as diabetes or pre-diabetes, but didn't account for a majority of the neuropathy that we saw. Additionally, we asked patients if they had any issues with bowel or bladder related to urgency or reduced control, and 67% of our cohort said that they did, which this incidence is higher than previous work that has been done that and another cohort reported only 23% of their cohort had sphincter or erectile dysfunction. So in summary, this is really preliminary data. Like I said, we just have the baseline data at this point, but we wanted to highlight a few interesting things that we've found so far, that the mutation groups here were significantly milder than the other mutation groups in terms of their physical function scores. Age didn't significantly correlate with their motor function scores. And then we also noticed a large proportion of our cohort demonstrated sensory impairments and bowel bladder concerns that were a higher incidence than previously reported cohorts. So this ongoing study will provide an opportunity to further understand patterns in disease progression and identify outcome measures that are most sensitive to change in individuals with VCP to inform future clinical trial design. So with that, I want to say thank you first to the patients that participated and Cure VCP for their collaboration and all their hard work that they did with this study. And then I have a picture of the team at Nationwide down below. So my email's there if you have any questions, and thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Natalie. And those second measures are coming up in October, right? They're starting up.
Yeah, yep. I think that is right around the time that we'll start seeing some people back. So coming up, we're excited to see everyone at least virtually.
All right, excellent.
Thank you.
All right, Megan, you want to try to share your screen there?
And unmute. I am a research physical therapist focusing in neuromuscular disease at Nationwide Children's Hospital. And today I will be talking about our baseline results and the use of the utility and reliability of patient-reported outcome measures, or PROs, for VCP MSP in our one-year prospective study. So this is the baseline. There we go. Okay, so as new drugs kind of move from the IND to clinical trials through commercial availability, the FDA has really put an emphasis on including patient-reported outcome measures in clinical trial design. This is so that it can help kind of support the claims of the product labeling, as well as measure the patient perspective of treatment benefit or risk in clinical trials. So identifying PROs that are reliable, valid, and sensitive to change is in a specific patient population is an important part of any clinical trial readiness study. And this is especially important in diseases that impact multiple domains of function or have a clinically heterogeneous presentation, much like VCP MSP. So different types of PROs. We have the single construct PROs. These are good because they gather more detailed information about one body system. However, if the treatment that you're testing does not impact that one system, then these are not going to be sensitive to change. Conversely, there's also composite construct PROs, and these are good because they provide a more global picture of the patient experience and the impact on activity and participation within the individual's environment. However, these may not be sensitive to change with treatment if that change does not occur across all of the domains. So for this study, as Natalie said, we had 24 subjects that were asked to complete a battery of global and targeted PROs following each baseline visit. So there were the 2 remote visits and the 2 in-person or in-clinic visits. The PROs that we included in this study were the PROMIS Global Health Measure, the Neuro Quality of Life Cognitive, Mobility, and Upper Extremity Measures, the Reash Overall ALS Disability Scale, or the ROADS, the Inclusion Body Myositis Functional Rating Scale, or the IBM-FRS, the Patient Global Impression of Change Scale, the EAT-10, which is a swallowing screening tool, the Communicative Participation Item Bank short form, or the CPIB, and the Speech Handicap Index. So as you can see, it's a nice balance of single construct and composite construct PROs. So starting to look at the reliability of the PROs, the ICCs were excellent between visit types, so between on-site and remote, and also within visit types, so between day 1 and day 2. To note, we found the least amount of variability in group performance on the PROMIS mobility and the greatest amount of variability on the CPIB. The only measure that we did not include in the reliability analysis was the Global Impression of Change Scale. And this is a scale that asks people to compare how much change they feel has occurred in their disease state compared to baseline day 1. So between visit types, as you can see here, a majority of the individuals in this cohort did not, or they reported stability between visit types. But however, those that reported improvement were following the on-site visits, and those that reported feeling worse were seen remotely. It could be for a number of reasons and may include being around clinicians and feeling safe or support from the on-site visits that could lead to an improved confidence. However, this is certainly not a definitive finding, just one that we thought was pretty interesting. And then moving over and looking at the performance of the PROs for the baseline visits. Here you can see a really nice distribution of scores in the PROMIS mobility, in the PROMIS global assessment, the IBM-FRS, and a little bit in the roads. However, one thing that we did notice was within the EAT-10, well, within the EAT-10 and within the speech handicap index and the CPIB, we notice a ceiling effect here. This means that these may not be sensitive to change in our specific cohort that we have. However, they did still provide us some interesting information, and that includes about 25% to 50% of the individuals reported some difficulty with eating, speech, or communication. Oh, there we are. And then moving on, looking at, it's always important to kind of analyze the relationship that these patient report of function are to our actual functional measures that we do in clinic. So starting with the single construct PROs up top, you can see that our neural quality of life upper extremity measure has a moderate to strong correlation against the PUL, which is the PUL is a functional measure that we do that measures upper extremity and hand function. And then the neural quality of life mobility scale has a very nice strong correlation to the NSAD, which is a measure of global gross motor function that looks at how individuals get up from the ground, roll over in bed, or stand up from a chair, and also had a strong correlation with the 100 meter, which is an assessment of ambulatory function. So they look really good for the single construct PROs. Looking at the composite construct PROs, the IBM-FRS showed was consistently strong and significant relationship across all of our functional assessments between all of the composite construct PROs. So as I presented, we've seen that these measures are reliable between days and between visit types, and they correlate pretty well to motor function. But based on our experience so far, there are some considerations when thinking about including PROs in a clinical study. The first is that to be aware of the scoring method that's used for the scale. There was some confusion when a majority of the scale had higher scores relating to no difficulty or being less affected, such as the roads or the neural quality of life, and then switched, and then kind of like partway through switched to the inverse of the scale, meaning the higher scores related to more difficulty in function, and that would be like on the E10 or the speech handicap index. So thinking about lumping scales together with similar scoring methods together may help kind of circumvent this issue. It's also important to consider, so with compliance, we did not have our the subjects complete the PROs sitting in the system or sitting during their visit. We emailed them a link and they were to complete them online. And so we did have some difficulty with compliance. We had 4 subjects that we had to provide a bunch of reminders to complete the PROs within that day of their baseline visit. We had 1 subject that did not complete them at all on 2 days, and 1 subject that did not fully complete the PROs for 1 visit. Interestingly, both of those subjects mentioned reported a family history of FTD and symptoms of FTD. So when working with a patient population that is at risk for a cognitive deficit or decline, considering maybe having them do it instead of online, having them do it in person during their visit. Additionally, the influence of constructs that are not being tested. So if you hand somebody a PRO that's asking them about their, lower extremity mobility, how they do things, if they're having a bad day, is that going to impact how they answer? What about testing fatigue? I mean, if you have them do a huge battery of testing, by the end, are they just going to be selecting whatever they want to be done with it? So that's also an important consideration. And then also, to conclude, PROs are as equally as important as functional testing. So these two kind of go hand in hand to give a good overall picture of clinical function and giving that kind of a link to the patient voice. So in summary, the FDA really recommends using PROs in clinical trial design. There are currently no PROs validated for use with VSP MSP or VCP MSP. And so we have looked and found quite a few that are reliable, that are valid cross-sectionally, and that look good. And then making sure that you have some consideration like disease characteristics, mode of administration, and patient compliance are all important to think of when determining which PROs and your method for testing PROs in clinical trials. And then next is we're just going to look at the longitudinal sensitivity to change over this 1-year period, and if the PROs change at the same rate as our other functional assessments. So that is all.
Thank you, Megan. And you do have, if you or Natalie in the chat can address some of the, I think Chris had a question about it, but let's, Iman, you want to go ahead and share your screen?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Megan.
Abdoalsadig. I'm currently an MPH candidate at the Yale School of Public Health, and I'm also a student researcher in Dr. Kimonis' lab at the University of California, Irvine. And so today I'll be presenting the utilization of Cohort's Registry to monitor quality of life in patients with VCP disease. So some of our aims of this study was to first and foremost investigate how VCP disease affects quality of life factors over an extended period of time. We also wanted to analyze the overall trends and sex differences in several factors such as mobility, cognitive function, pain levels, and quality of life in patients with VCP disease. So as a result, we had a collaboration with Cure VCP Disease and the Cohort Patient Registry. And so for those of you who don't know, the Cohort Registry stands for Coordination of Rare Diseases at Stanford, and they are a centralized international patient registry for rare diseases. So we conducted a natural history study where we asked participants to report their mobility, their cognitive function, their pain scores, and their overall quality of life. And so over here on the right-hand side, we can kind of see a demographics of our participants in our cohort. So we had about 80 participants representing from all around the world. And so we reported their age of onset of certain diseases, as well as their mutations of the VCP gene. We also wanted to take a unique approach of showing the patient's comorbidities. So we decided to create a Venn diagram. And so over here in the center, we have myopathy. So we have 20 participants that reported myopathy alone. And the second most we had was participants reporting both myopathy and Paget's disease of bone. So we see here that there are 13 participants that reported that. And a few notable things as well is that we did have some participants that had dementia as well as ALS. So over here, as I mentioned earlier, we wanted to see the progression of the disease. And so what we did was over here on the left-hand side, I'm not sure if you guys can see my mouse, but on the left-hand side, we are showing the mobility. So here on the upper left, we have the lower extremity function progression. And then on the bottom left, we are showing the upper extremity function. And then over here on the right-hand side, we are showing the cognitive function. And so what we did was we asked them to answer the questionnaires, and it was through a 5-point Likert scale. We took that, we took the total raw score. So participants that generally have no difficulty in their mobility or in their cognitive function or performing specific tasks would report a higher total raw score versus someone that has much difficulty would have a much lower raw score. So we took that and compared it with their age in years. So we wanted to see two things. We want to see first and foremost the overall trend in both males and females, and that can be identified by the dashed lines. And we also wanted to see the specific trends within participants who reported multiple data entries. And so as we can see here on the left-hand side, for both lower and upper extremity, we do see a pretty steep decline in their mobility for both males and females overall. And we can also see the same thing if we were to look more specifically within each of the participants that reported multiple data entries. We do see, for the most part, a decline in their mobility. However, when it comes to cognitive function, while we do see a decline, it is definitely a lot more gradual. And for the most part, for a lot of the participants that did report multiple data entries, they reported no change. But you can see that for the most part, though, a lot of them did not really have no difficulty with their cognitive function. Another factor that we wanted to assess was their pain levels. So we asked them to report their pain levels on a scale of 0 to 10, so 0 being no pain and 10 being the worst pain imaginable. So here on the left-hand side, we wanted to show both, again, males and females for their latest data entry. And so we see the overall trends. And then, again, we wanted to see the progression of pain levels with age. So here on the y-axis, we are showing pain levels from 0 to 10 along with their age. And so what we see here for the trend is that overall for males, we do see an increase in pain. However, with females, we do see that decline. However, I would say that it is best for us to focus more specifically on the participants that reported multiple data entries. And so if we do that, we do see that they do report an increase in their pain levels. And last but not least, we also asked a series of questions in terms of their quality of life to see how the VCP disease has hindered their quality of life activities. So some of the questions that we asked them was their overall general health, also how depressed that they feel, how often they feel tired, and how their pain levels hinder their everyday activities. So this time what we did was we grouped them into different age groups. So we have here on our x-axis the different age groups. And then in our y-axis, we have the average score that they reported. So a score of 5 would be an excellent quality of life, while a score of 1 will be a poor quality of life. And as we can see overall in terms of the trends, we do see a decline in all aspects of their quality of life. So in summary, as expected, we did see that both males and females reported a decline in their upper and lower extremity function. And we also saw that in the cognitive function with increasing age. And this is consistent with other studies where we know that with IBM-PFD, one of the main clinical features is muscle weakness and moderate to severe myopathy. We also noticed that participants with VCP disease do experience worsening quality of life symptoms with age. So in conclusion, we believe that the Cohort's patient registry is a very useful tool in monitoring quality of life. And we suggest that future studies should continue to monitor the progression of the disease amongst participants for a longer period of time. For this study specifically, some participants only reported 1 data entry, while other participants reported maybe up to 3, so through the span of 3 years. So we believe that having this study go on for a much longer period of time will give us a much better idea of the phenotypic symptoms. So I just want to take this last slide to thank all the participants and their contribution to the study. I also want to thank Cure VCP Disease for their supporting in the acquisition of the patient registry data from Cohort's registry. And I also wanted to thank all the contributors who put in a great effort for this manuscript. And thank you all for listening to my presentation. If you would like to reach out to me, I have provided my email over here. And I'm also very happy to connect with all of you through LinkedIn. But yeah, that is basically it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eiman. That was excellent. And as we've mentioned before, the patient registry is available with IRB requests to anybody. So to all researchers. All right, so that is going to, so thank you again, Natalie, Megan, and Eiman for those presentations. We're going to conclude this session. I'll remind you that you need to exit out of the session, go back in and click on our next session, which is going to be great. And we're starting without a break. So we are rolling into it right now. So thank you for joining this session, and it is ended right now.